Toledo, Ohio, and I'm really excited to be hanging out today with Stephen Shattuck. Welcome, Stephen.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're excited that you're coming to town next week. Stephen is the co-founder of Launch Cause, and he's also one of our expert speakers in our 2017 workshop series, so we're very excited. We just want to spend a little bit of time to help you get to know Stephen a little bit better. So, Stephen, what would you like to tell us about yourself?
Yeah, well, I founded Launch Cause last year. It's my first nonprofit ED gig. Launch Cause is a pretty cool collaborative space that was loaned to me by Bloomerang, which is another company that I work for during my day job. But we've got about 9,000 square feet here in Indianapolis that we are renting out to the nonprofit community. So there's office space, co-working space, event space. So we host board meetings, we host volunteer get-togethers with people packaging bags or boxes to be sent out. Lots of cool things happening there. And then we also host our own educational workshops where we bring in speakers and just invite the indie community to come learn about a topic from an expert speaker. So very cool space. There's a lot of co-working spaces in Indianapolis, but there wasn't one just for nonprofits. So we're trying to fill that gap.
Wow, very innovative, and we thank you for being a leader in your community in Indy, certainly a best practices for us to take a look at. So you're going to be talking next week to people in the workshop about social media, and I'll be coming back to the details at the end of the podcast for that. What is it that gets you so excited about social media?
Well, my kind of feeling on social media for nonprofits is that I think it's kind of a almost criminally underutilized channel for gift acknowledgement, for volunteer appreciation, employee recognition, just showing thanks to the people who support our organization. What maybe a better way to answer is what doesn't excite me. And what doesn't excite me is tons of appeals and, kind of weird content like, inspirational quotes and cat pictures and things like that I tend to see maybe a little too often on nonprofits, Facebook pages and Twitter feeds. That stuff can work, but when it's the only thing we're sending out, there tend to not be many results happening there. And why I like appreciation is because donors and volunteers and anyone who supports nonprofits, they want that. They crave that kind of recognition. And when you do that through social media, there's just this kind of force multiplier effect because, you probably know, anyone watching this knows that people use social media to brag and maybe to show off a little bit. And when you can recognize people on social media for their philanthropic activity, it just takes that to a whole new level. So not only are you showing appreciation to those supporters, which is really important, but the content tends to perform better because it gets engagement, it gets likes and comments and shares way more than, a press release or maybe an event invitation or blog article or something like that.
And that's really the end game, isn't it? Engagement with our donors and volunteers.
Yeah, and it goes beyond just getting likes. I mean, likes are okay, but are people going forward maybe to your website and taking action? So I think one key to getting that engagement that is really sort of tangible and actually produces a result is the fear of missing out, right? So this effect of FOMO, if you share a volunteer photo and you can see in their faces that those volunteers had a really great time, that generates more volunteer interest than just asking for volunteers, right? When you can actually visualize the experience and include those volunteers in the post and have them say, hey, it was such an awesome time, it was really fun to be there, then people start to think, oh, that looks like a great opportunity. Maybe I should get involved and give up an afternoon or an evening hanging out with that nonprofit. So you're kind of making an ask without making an ask, in a sort of very sort of straightforward way. So if you can create sort of that feeling of FOMO through recognition, that's what's going to generate those results and those sort of meaningful interactions.
And for those people who aren't familiar, what does FOMO stand for?
Fear of missing out. It's kind of, I would say it's the most powerful sort of emotion that can be transmitted through social media. I mean, think about your Facebook feed. You're seeing people taking vacations and going to cool restaurants. Like, we share that content. That's the kind of content that we just cannot help but share. And a nonprofit can do the exact same thing. Look at the awesome experiences that our donors are having. Look at the awesome experiences that our volunteers, employees are having. Don't you want to be a part of that? Rather than just asking, hey, would you donate? Would you volunteer? Because that doesn't really create those sort of compelling feelings in someone's brain. But when they see someone actively doing those things and enjoying the process, that's what triggers the interest in their mind.
Mm-hmm. So I know that you do work with a lot of different nonprofits. Are there other examples where you see these nonprofits leveraging or best practices leveraging social media for fundraising?
Yeah, I think it's creating a dialogue. So often we use social media as just kind of a bullhorn. Like, we have this message, we're just going to send it out, and we hope that you digest it or consume that content. But when organizations create a dialogue, that's when the really cool things happen. And usually it happens after a gift. But you have to take sort of a long range approach to say, hey, if we create a dialogue after that interaction happens, it will increase the chances of a repeat interaction. And you asked for an example. I'll give you one that's close to both Indy and Toledo. Purdue University up in Lafayette, Indiana, they recently had an online day of giving. I think it was tied to maybe like the anniversary of the college or the university being founded. And what they did is they were asking for gifts all day, and they were generating some donations online, but they used social media to thank those donors that day who had given. So if an alumni had given, or maybe even a student or a board member or an employee, they dedicated their Twitter account that day to creating individual unique videos for each of those donors and sending them out to say thank you. So they were tweeting them out, they were using Facebook. So they turned sort of a day of giving into a day of gratitude. So all the content that was shared on social media wasn't necessarily about asking for the gift, but it was thanking the donors who had given that day. And that accomplishes those two goals that I talked about earlier. It thanks the donors, which is really important, and research shows that we should thank our donors very quickly and very personally. But other people were seeing that content who had not yet given, and that created that fear of missing out. So I know, and I didn't see the results, and I haven't seen their bank account or anything, but I would guess that was incredibly impactful on both of those levels. So using video, unique content for one specific person, not just saying, thank you to all of our donors in one Facebook post, but maybe sending out hundreds and maybe even thousands of tweets if you have that kind of gift volume to each individual person. Because so often, like I said, we use Facebook as sort of this broad reaching category, but we don't use it to communicate one-to-one. So organization to one donor, organization to one volunteer. And those messages are public. Other people can see them, of course, but the intent was thanking or highlighting one individual person in sort of a public forum.
Very innovative. I mean, if I received one of those, I would be so pleasantly surprised.
Exactly, and it doesn't happen very often. Very few people are using it for that purpose. So it creates such surprise and such a personal feeling of gratitude that it will increase the likelihood that they give again. So you kind of have to take a long game approach a little bit, but it definitely pays dividends over the long term.
And I'm glad you brought up the topic of research, because I know you and your group have done extensive research in the area of fundraising. Mm-hmm. Is there anything you can share with us, some insights into the trends that you've identified?
Yeah, we're not good at retaining donors. We are actively, Bloomerang is an active participant in a research study specifically into donor retention. This is a research study that's been in the makings for about 11 years. They do an annual report. The organization is called the Fundraising Effectiveness Project, and they collect data from many of the leading donor database providers in the industry. So Bloomerang is one. Other organizations that probably your folks use, me like eTapestry, Neon, Donor Perfect, names you would recognize. FEP collects all that anonymous data, and they release a report showing how well we're doing at specifically retaining donors. So it's not about donor acquisition or anything like that. It's just about how well we are getting repeat gifts from donors. And we're not very good about it. And in fact, in Toledo next week, I'm going to be showing this brand new data that just came out a couple of days ago. So it may actually be the first time this data is ever shown. We're only retaining about 20% of first-time donors. But if we can get a second gift, the retention rates increase to 60%. So the chances of getting a third gift, much higher than getting a second gift. So anything you can do for first-time donors specifically to make them feel really special, like you said, make them feel very appreciated, that's really the key to donor retention. And social media can play a big part of it. It's not the only thing. I'm not saying that, you know, a thank you tweet should replace a thank you letter or a thank you phone call, but it can definitely supplement those things and maybe augment them. So if you're calling a new donor and maybe sending them a thank you tweet and sending them a nice handwritten letter, all those things kind of working together are going to increase those retention rates.
Well, I, for one, Stephen, can't wait to hear what you have to say and share next week. For those of you who want to join us, Stephen will be in the Toledo area on February the 7th. Plan to join his presentation, Share the Love, using social media to show gratitude. This workshop is in the fundraising track for those pursuing the Certificate in Nonprofit Management program. And if you're tracking CFRE credits, this workshop has been approved for 3 hours. And you can register for Stephen's workshop at our website, www.c4npr.org. Thanks again, Stephen, and we'll look forward to connecting with you next week.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and it'll be really fun. Lots of good examples, lots of concrete data, not a lot of opinion and philosophy, just a lot of practical and tactical things. I think you'll have a lot of fun.
We will. See you next week.
All right, see you there.